going to help them build the skills that they're going to need to succeed. And we know that that leads to communities that get into trouble, right? And there's been plenty of injustice in our history already in terms of what's happened in the east side of San Jose historically and who's lived there. And organizations like Alum Counseling Center really are stepping in, really before our government is, in many ways, to provide those services, right? And to make sure that families have the counseling they need, and that we are able to deal with trauma, right? And that we are able to, in essence, it may sound dramatic, but save lives, right? Build communities. And that's exactly what we need. That's why I'm a part of it. I didn't grow up in East Side San Jose, but I did grow up in Harlem, New York, and I know many, many people, including myself, really, that could have benefited from Alum Counseling Center, or an organization like it, right? And so we are lucky that we have this in the East Side of San Jose, and we ought to support them. And just a little side note on that, they are having a holiday toy drive. And last month, we also brought this bin over here. I know that we've had some folks from the board here at SVDC buy some toys, which you could go ahead and pay for so that you could put them in the bin. And last month, we had over 20 toys that were donated on our end, only one meeting. I wish that we were able to buy these toys and give them to folks next month that are going to benefit from it. It may not otherwise get the opportunity to have the prototypical Christmas, right, that we think about, right, with the gifts and the toys and everything else. So that's the first thing. The second organization is one that I know tangentially, and really I should know more about them because they do such good work in terms of domestic violence, prevention, and also making sure that there is a place where domestic violence victims could go for support. And that is extremely important. We know the numbers, right? And we know the fact that even if we have had social movements that have brought about an improvement, right, in what we expect from our communities, that the numbers in domestic violence and rape are actually growing. Right? And that's alarming. And we need help. And Next Door Solutions provides that help. It's actually, I believe, the premier organization in terms of providing services as it regards to domestic violence. And is it the oldest here in the Valley?
First Spanish-speaking organization. First Spanish-speaking organization. And the second one in California.
Right. So there is a lot of history there, there is a lot of good work, and there is work that we need to support. And so here's the kicker. What we really want from you guys, the toys are great, but what we want from you guys in order to support them is money, right? Money is tight, and specifically as it regards to nonprofit, if anybody is involved with the nonprofit world, you know that there is a big difference between restricted funds and unrestricted funds, right? And restricted funds are going to come from the county, they're going to come from the state, right? And they may come from other sources, but can only be used for specific programs. But specific programs don't pay the bills, right? Specific programs are not the ones that are going to pay the rent. And so we've heard history, we've heard stories about nonprofits losing their offices and having to scramble and figure things out. Right? That is the importance of unrestricted funds, and I will tell you from experience in Alum Counseling Center, we welcome all of it. And SVDC has not only given us this space to ask for your money, and has not only given us a place in the website where you can go right now and donate through PayPal, is it? There is a link on the website where you can put your information and donate that way. They have offered to match up to $500 in donations for both organizations. So whatever you give, they will give up to $500. Right? So I really, really would suggest each, yes, both. So really it's $1,000 for both organizations. I would really suggest you go onto the website. If you get our newsletter, right, the link should be there as well. I would really suggest go back to the website, check out the newsletter, and please donate because it really, really goes a long ways toward helping the mission of both of these organizations. And ultimately, we don't have to try too hard to make a connection between the two. right? This is about families, right? And families are the building block of communities, right? And when we have healthier communities, specifically also in communities in San Jose that are being hammered right now, and are struggling mightily, then we step in a moment where we are needed. And if the Democratic Party is not filling that void and providing for that need, then I don't know what we're doing. So I would strongly suggest check out the link and please give and check out these toys. The bin will not be here all night, but even if the bin is gone, please feel free by the end of the meeting to go check out the toys, make a purchase, and we'll get those to folks out next month. Thank you very much. The next person we're going to hear from is... Oh, okay. So we're also going to pass a jar, and you want to come in? Okay, so it's 2 jars or it's just 1 jar? So it's we're going to pass a jar. You either put in a check or cash, whatever you have, and this will be for both organizations. So if you feel specifically strongly about one organization, please make sure you let folks know, and we'll make sure to dedicate it to that organization. So I did use the 10 minutes. Thank you guys very much. We'll move on and actually get started with the forum, and for that we'll call the moderator, Mara, to come out here and get us started. Thank you.
Hi everybody.
Hi, Laura.
I am gonna set this over here because I have a lot of shit to do. Wait, sorry, I apologize for that. So, in case you haven't figured it out so far this evening, this is my first time moderating anything. So please bear with me if I'm a little bit problematic. I will do my best to be as professional as humanly possible, but I'm not going to guarantee it. So, I have a series of questions that I am going to ask our candidates, and I would like to introduce them to both come to the mini stage here. Thank you, Laura. If you don't know who's sitting with us tonight, we have Mahan and Jenny Bradanini, and they're going to be answering a series of questions that the Silicon Valley Democratic Club's endorsement committee has requested that they ask or answer tonight. So I'm going to do my best. I'm going to give each candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves and tell the group why we should be supporting them. And then I'm going to go into a series of questions. And then we'll have a short section for audience questions. I would encourage you all to keep your questions to a minute.
I will
And
be timing
responses to a minute, and if you don't know Rosie will be timing, so you're done when Rosie says you're done. And then we're gonna do 2 minutes of closing statements for each of the candidates. So at this time, I would like to encourage Matt to go ahead and introduce himself for 2 minutes.
To see all of you. This is exactly how I thought I would spend my 37th birthday. So it's very nice to be here with all of you. Thank you, and I apologize for my failing voice. I'm just getting over a cold and I've kind of lost it. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Great to be here with Jenny. There are 4 of us in this race, and Jenny and I are the only 2 Democrats, so it's good to be amongst friends. I want to just start by laying out a couple of things. Number one, I really, since I was a kid and my mom was a school teacher, and my dad was a letter carrier who was in a union, I have believed in the values of the Democratic Party, and I have been involved in Democratic politics and progressive campaigns my entire life, from working in New Hampshire for the Howard Dean campaign, to being in Iowa for the Obama campaign, for the caucuses, to the Fight for 15. I helped lead the Justice for Janitors campaign on my college campus and got Harvard to divest for the first time in its history from 2 oil companies for ethical reasons. And so I really believe in what our party stands for, and I think that it's important to elect Democrats in San Jose. I am also committed to public service. I came back after college to be a public school teacher at Eastside San Jose. I worked in Alum Rock, which was mentioned earlier, and I know what those families face every day. I also started a technology startup to build tools to help people participate in their democracy. That's actually what I've spent most of the last decade doing, is building tools to help people organize and build power and advocate and affect policies that impact their lives. So I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be running. I think I am the Democrat in this race that can build a winning coalition in a district that tends to be really fiscally conservative. And I hope to convince you tonight that I'm the right person to receive the club's endorsement. So thank you again for your time.
Democrats, thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for allowing us this platform to answer questions and tell you a little bit more about our campaigns. And happy birthday, Matt. This is exactly where I thought you would be on your 37th birthday. Yeah, we're going to be celebrating a lot of things. So anyway, my name is Jennie Higgins-Bradanini, and what you probably know me as, many of you, is the president of Women's March Bay Area, which in 2016 we mobilized over 400,000 people. And as an organization, we continue to grow. We're focusing on civic engagement, voter registration. Mark your calendars, January 18th will be our fourth Women's March here at Cesar Chavez, I think this time. So as the organization grows, we are now supporting progressive women candidates, both locally and nationally. But what you may not know about me is that I've lived in District 10 for over 20 years, and my professional successes and my community experience is enough to run on alone. I have been involved in the school district. In 2010, I was a volunteer of the year. I've hosted blood drives in my community, involved in community organizations. I'm still on the PTA board of Pioneer High School. My son is a senior, so if I'm on it again next year, then you might want to check me out. But we also, a little bragging point, we were the first school to get 100% membership for 3 years in a row on our PTA. But what I want to say is, now more than ever, our Democratic Party is counting on us to support, or our families are counting on the Democratic Party to support progressive candidates. We need to elect a socially progressive women that are pro-choice at all levels of government. San Jose is struggling. We need to change the tone and the majority on our council to a council that will fight for people over corporate profits. So tonight, I hope that after you hear all our answers and our explanations, that I will be the candidate that you give the sole endorsement to. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jenny. I really appreciate you guys keeping with the timelines, because I would hate to see what Rosie did if you did it. Scared of Rosie. Okay, so now we're going to go to the moderator questions. I have a section of 6 questions for you guys that have been pre-selected. Alternate between the two of you who answers first, and I'm going to go ahead and start with Matt on this first one. And then the second one will be Jenny, and we'll go back and forth until we get to the end of the 6.
It's a minute and a half.
And there is a minute and a half timeline for your responses. There are some large affordable housing development projects planned for San Jose around the lower part of Blossom Hill Road. How do they fit into the city master plan for orderly and sustainable growth?
All right. So I think it's better if we stand. You can see that we are starting to densify and infill in our urban areas. I think environmentally, one of the worst things we can do is continue to sprawl out. The land use development pattern we've had in past decades is not going to continue to work for us. And so the Blossom Hill corridor that was referred to as part of our district, it's already near light rail, which is critical. So it is within walking distance of light rail stops. It's also near our freeways that have carpool lanes. And I think that being transit oriented, starting to densify our major corridors is just critical for fighting climate change and protecting the environment. I also think that walkable communities are healthier and more vibrant, and so I welcome density, especially when it's smart and it's transit oriented and it supports our public space. And it fits into the general plan because our general plan wants to see us reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce vehicle miles traveled and start to get people out of their cars and mode shifting into buses and trains. And I think we know what the future needs to look like. It needs to be denser, walkable, transit-oriented with jobs and housing located next to one another. And even though we're in a more suburban district, and this might not be the most popular thing in our district, I have been clear as I campaign that we have to change the way that we do land use and development. And I don't think that means densifying on the very periphery of the city, but I do think on Blossom Hill, where we have light rail and bus lines, is a perfect place to start to do smart density. Thank you.
I'm excited about this project that's going in right at the border of District 2 and 10. I think that it does make sense to be building these high density around transit. It doesn't make sense for Almaden and to keep sprawling out when our public transportation is not viable into District 10. They're took away one of our bus routes. It's making it harder and harder for people to use the public transportation in District 10. So again, we need to concentrate around transit centers, high density for a lot of the reasons Matt also said, to keep our carbon emissions down, and because it's a smart thing to do. When you bring up the 2040 plan, I think we need to revisit that and look at some of these urban developments that are scheduled to be built and see if they still make sense. Some of them are not near transit, and some of them could be infill, or maybe even places where we could change into just business only instead of mixed residential and business. So yes, I'm supportive of this plan, and I look forward for it to be completed.
Do you support collaboration between local government and ICE officials?
No. First of all, ICE actually already has access to the database. They're blaming the cities and the counties for not doing their jobs. If they want to look in the database, they can see who was arrested and who was let out. It's also kind of a false, not even kind of, it's a false narrative to make our community feel like they're safer if ICE is working with our county jails. 82% of immigrants are already, according to surveys, afraid to talk to law enforcement. So when I was talking to Chief Eddie Garcia about this, back before, he was, this will make a lot of our leads and our information when we're trying to investigate crimes just shut down. So to answer the question, ICE already has access to our databases, and I think that they should do their job instead of putting it back on us to do their job.
I grew up down in Watsonville in a community that is a third undocumented. I also taught in Eastside San Jose, as I mentioned, out in Alum Rock. And I know from personal experience what kind of fear people live in our immigrant communities. So I am not supportive of cooperating with ICE on raids. I am not supportive of this administration's policies that is anti-family and anti-immigrant. And I am, and have for my entire political life, been very supportive of a path to citizenship and supporting and protecting our immigrant population. I do want to note, though, that and I support our sanctuary city policies. However, we should be smart about our policies. And on the specific issue of when a violent criminal, we're talking about the smallest percentage of people. Most people do not commit crimes. Most undocumented immigrants do not commit crimes. And when they do, they're not violent crimes. But in that very small case, for the most heinous crimes, where we say we're not going to cooperate when Alameda County does, when San Mateo County does, when Monterey County does. When we do that, what we do is we give ICE an excuse to do raids in our community because we say we're not going to work with you at all because we don't like who's in the White House, and that is actually playing into their hands. And so I think we have to be smart and convince the community that we're looking out for the safety of the entire community, including our undocumented community. But in general, no, I'm very much not supportive of cooperating with ICE and allowing them into our community, and I do not support ICE raids. I think we need to do more to support our undocumented community. Thank you.
Question number 3, I'm going to have Jenny start with this one for the answer. Do you support efforts to reform Prop 13 through split roll so that residential taxes remain limited but corporations pay higher taxes to fund education?
I'm a former public school teacher, and I can tell you that we do not pay teachers enough, and we do not support our teachers enough. We absolutely need more investment in public education. It is the future of our community. There's a competing ballot initiative that I am also interested in and want to look at. I will just say that I have some concerns that if we target taxes on businesses, we may have unintended consequences that we need to just be careful of. I'm all for raising taxes to fund public education. I actually worked directly with Governor Brown on I believe it was Prop 30 back in 2012, which raised the millionaire's tax by 1/3 to go to public education, billions of dollars. And so I am all for taxing concentrations of wealth. And you know, when companies concentrate wealth, they concentrate in the hands of their shareholders and their executives. And that's where we should go get money for public education. So don't get me wrong, I very much support taxing concentrations of wealth to fund public education. I do think we need to be careful. If we make it too expensive to do business here, and I've run a couple of companies, this is one of the most expensive places in the world to do business, we do risk companies moving out of state, job growth happening in other places, prices going up on our goods and services, prices going up for small businesses. So again, I'm all for it, but let's be smart about policy and crafting policy to go after wealth and where it's concentrated in order to fund public education. Let's not just make doing business more expensive and raise consumer prices. Thank you.
Yes, I publicly have endorsed the split rollback. As a matter of fact, I was one of the organizers with the Gen Up kids that organized a rally in a march last Saturday. I support it because Prop 13 has been a long time coming in a reform. If we don't figure it out in 2020, it's going to be back on the ballot. I think it's fair that legacy companies are paying the equitable fare of taxes. We are 41st on the list of per pupil funding per student, and we're almost last at our teacher ratio. This proposal will bring in close to $11 billion annually that our schools just need. The status quo is not working. I don't think it's going to make it harder for small businesses. There's limits in there. If you're a company of 50 or more employees or 2 million, this does not apply. And that's always assuming that the property taxes are passed on. In many situations, they're not going to be. And I think this is crucial. We don't have any other options coming forward to bring our schools where they need to be. Thank you.
Thank you both for your answers. Next question, Jenny, you get this one to start. Sorry about the mix-up last time.
No worries.
Thanks for catching me on that, I appreciate it. Describe your connection to the D10 neighborhoods, so District 10, and why you're the best person to serve that community.
It goes back 20 plus years. I've raised my children there. I think I told you a little bit about this in the beginning, and it's all about community. I think it's really important that we bring that sense of community to City Hall. People that have lived experience in District 10 know the people and know the issues are very important. My legacy in the community goes back to an organization called Power in Purple, where we hosted a blood drive every year in my court. We raised money for families that were suffering from cancer, a little girl named Jordan. I can tell you more about that. So I really think that District 10 is very excited about my candidacy and supporting me. They really are looking forward to having someone that represents their values at City Council, and I think also someone that is less conservative than our council member now. You know, I think District 10 gets labeled as very conservative, but that's not what I'm finding at the doors. People are excited, they're ready to have someone that represents their values at City Council. So again, I think it goes back to community, and I think sometimes that's what's missing when our council members vote, is speaking about the people.
So when I was 14, I had a choice between going to my local public school and had a 50% dropout rate, or making the 2-hour each way bus ride on public buses over to San Jose to go to high school. And I got a scholarship to go to Bellarmine, which I was very grateful for. And I first got to know the the San Jose community through my experience at Bellarmine. I worked summers on the grounds crew. I did that commute almost every day. The days that I didn't do that commute, I stayed on the couches of friends in San Jose and got to know the neighborhoods down in District 10, Blossom Hill, Almaden, Santa Teresa, and really fell in love with the special community we have there. When my wife Sylvia and Sylvia's about to give birth literally any day now, when we decided to move back to San Jose to start a family, we chose District 10 because we loved the neighborhoods and the community feel there. Since then, I have worked hard for the community. That bus line that was referenced, I co-organized the campaign to save the 13 bus, which is used by students and seniors in our community. I co-founded the Friends of the Guadalupe Oak Grove Park Association, which is a volunteer group that maintains one of our local parks that's been underinvested in. And I think the proof's in the pudding. We had over 200 community members come to our kickoff. I have dozens of volunteers coming out every week to help on the campaign. We have knocked on more doors. We're getting a great response from the community. I think I'm building bridges and showing that Yes, I'm a Democrat, but I also understand the issues facing all of the different neighborhoods and can bring people together.
Thank you both for your responses. So next to last moderator question, I'm going to let Matt start with this one for you. The question is, do you support a Green New Deal?
Yes, in principle. I think right now it really is just a statement of principle. So at the level of saying we need to take the climate crisis for the incredible crisis that it is. I mean, I think the two biggest challenges facing our world are wealth inequality and climate change. And so by saying we have to prioritize this and we have to take a bold leap of faith that the technology is going to be there, that we can get the behavior change to happen, and that it's all going to come together, yes, I support it. There's a lot to work out in the details, and frankly, a lot of it, having come from the technology sector, a lot of it is still technical limitations as well. And so I'm glad to see the political will and the statement of ambition, but I think we also need, as a country, this is not so much a city council thing, but we need significant R&D and foundational research to get storage and other technologies in place to actually make that leap. Just to show you my commitment to this issue, I mentioned the divestment campaign I ran around a couple of oil companies in college. I've also served on the city's Clean Energy Commission. So I actually helped the city move to its Clean Energy Community Choice Program. I spent the last 2 years working on helping us transition to a program that can prioritize buying renewable sources of energy, and we've already increased the mix of our energy that comes from renewable sources. So I'm very committed to fighting climate change. I think it does fit into other issues like health, obviously, like jobs, and so I like the bold statement of principles, absolutely.
Yes, I absolutely support the Green New Deal, and I think we're foolish for anyone that would doubt it and hesitate to even say yes to that. Climate change is the #1 priority issue that is facing our world. Take a look at the kids. They get it, they're out there, they're worried, they're doing something about it, and I feel like as adults, we need to support them because they're gonna be living here a lot longer than us. So I think it even goes to like the little things. You know, the Green New Deal is a lot of the big thought and big things, and innovation in Silicon Valley can definitely help that, but it's little things. I was meeting with some of the people from the VTA, and I think even an education campaign about why it's important to ride public transportation. I have teenagers, I said, I'll fill up your gas tank if you ride the bus, and they were horrified. You know, they don't know about it. So I think simple little things about teaching why the environment is important, not only to our children, but to our adults, and to not take things for granted. So a simple answer, I could go on, but I wholeheartedly support the Green New Deal.
All right, thank you both again. So the last moderator question that I have for you guys tonight is, do you support limiting the contributions that large developers can make to San Jose council races and realign the mayoral elections so that they align with the presidential elections to increase voter turnout and participation? And Jenny, you got first on this one.
I support moving the mayoral election. I think that this is a democracy. With Women's March, encourage civic engagement. We just saw what was happening in Florida and Kentucky, where voters in their communities were finding it hard to vote. I think that San Jose can be an example, and we make it easier. We need representation. We need people to come out and vote, and removing any obstacles that will do that, I'm wholeheartedly stand behind. The second part is a little bit more tricky. I do feel like this will be more of a divisive part of it. We do have regulations about who can donate and what they can donate, a $600 limit. I don't think either Matt or I or any candidate that's running for city council can be bought with $600, but I do think a lot of $600 can influence a decision. So I think putting clean and fair elections and resolutions and regulations in place that prevent that, where candidates can't be influenced, is important. So yes, I will support that measure.
So I hope you all read the measure very closely. I am yes and no on the measure on the two parts, and I'll explain why, and I really hope you'll read it closely. So I spent the last 10 years building technology to promote civic engagement, as I mentioned. I'm a big believer in increasing turnout and increasing the quality of participation. So moving the mayor's race to the presidential cycle makes sense. The other part of the initiative, though, I don't think makes a lot of sense. I think it is actually deceptive. It pulls a few groups out, and so the proponents of the initiative have identified a few groups they don't like, developers, contractors, and landlords owning more than 6 units, and said, you can't participate, but we're not a special interest. And really dig into it. I mean, look at what's behind it. Who's funding it, who's running it, who they're targeting. I am all for getting special interest money out of politics, but let's do it transparently, let's do it equally. This is just a matter of principle. Believe me, it's not because I care about any of the particular groups involved. I just think we should not be deceptive about it. We should be really clear about these are all the groups and all the rules are going to apply uniformly. I'm pretty sure if it passes, it will not be found constitutional because of that second part. So I can't in good conscience stand up here and tell you, yes, absolutely, this is a great initiative. Sounds good on the surface. Please look at the details. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you both. So the next section is actually audience questions, and so each person is going to get 1 minute to be able to answer the questions. I'm going to say if maybe you have an audience question, if you could line up over here because we don't have a whole lot of mics. You can ask the question. They'll have 1 minute each to respond, and then hopefully we'll get through those relatively quickly.
All the timing of the questions.
Yes.
So you'll
Question
have 1
and
minute
answers.
to ask your question. And how
Okay.
long for the candidates to answer? 1 minute.
1 minute. 1 minute for your question, 1 minute for their answer per candidate. And we're going to try to get through these as quickly as possible and then get on to closing statements so that everybody can do their voting and endorsement. Alrighty.
My name is Frank. I'm a new resident of San Jose. I grew up on the East Coast. I lived in New York City, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. I find the homeless encampments in this city horrific. I'm surrounded by them on the Alameda. I live on the Alameda. And I worry that some of the people that have lived here for decades or have become numb to those encampments. In fact, maybe even their children have as well. But I'll tell you, it's an eyesore. If you think it promotes business, I would say just the opposite. Your tourism is way up. I would suggest it might be 30% higher. And so my question is to you, how would you handle homeless encampments differently than the current administration in San Jose?
It's one of the most common questions I get into doors, and I think that we can't just treat the homeless population as one monolithic population. We need different solutions for different subpopulations. There's a huge part of the homeless population that are the working poor who are living in their cars because they can't afford the rent. And so for them, the answer is we need affordable housing. For other members of the homeless population, there may be substance abuse or mental health issues, and housing is necessary, but it's going to be insufficient. And so we have to also invest in the healthcare solutions, the facilities that will help those people actually rebuild their lives. And we can't just make it a housing issue. What we're currently doing isn't working at all. It's inhumane and it's costing money. We're literally just shuffling people around. So I will prioritize mental health and substance abuse treatment, and I will advocate for building the affordable housing we need to help people who are getting priced out of their apartments afford to live here. It's a more complicated issue than I can answer in 1 minute, but that's a start for it. You have to triage the different subpopulations and provide individualized support, and that's what works in other cities.
The encampments are not solving the solutions, and we need to do things, and we need to do them fast. These are people's lives that are at stake. People are dying every day. The answer is permanent, supportive housing. But we need to stop cutting funds that would have had that happen, like the vote on city council, where they basically gave away $67 million that would have gone into building affordable housing. I also think you have to look at the homeless not as one, but look at the different groups with the survey. What got me, 20% of our homeless are either have been in foster care or currently in foster care. So things like that, we need to figure out why that system isn't working. We need to provide health and mental health, easy access. So again, the permanent supportive solutions is the way we gotta go, and we need to look at creative ways of doing that instead of just moving people around and allowing more sanctioned encampments.
Hi, my name is Ken. I'm a school board member, so I was listening carefully to your answer about split rolls and property taxes. And I think that what we're seeing with split rolls is an unanticipated consequence in terms of shifting the tax burden from business to residences, because businesses are able to, prevent property transfers and therefore tax increases. So opposing a split roll is really arguing that we should maintain that inequity and in a sense provide a subsidy from our homeowners to business in a way that has a negative impact on both schools and other recipients of those funds and also businesses. So I'd like to hear what you say about it. I understand this idea that there are these concentrations of wealth, and in the future maybe we could tax those. But that is really, it seems to be making the perfect the enemy of the good. So I'm interested in how you think about that.
So thanks, Kim, for the question. Stand is equitable, and I still think that Prop 13 wasn't designed to be unequitable and to prevent unfair business. So these legacy companies that have been there for years, and we have a new company coming in that's paying their fair share of taxes, and we don't have our companies paying the fair share of taxes, I don't think that's fair. I think that, again, that's not what Prop 13 was for. I don't agree with the split rollback if it's going to affect our residents, but that's not how it's written. So that's my answer. Thank you for the question, Ken.
Actually anti-competitive to have legacy companies that don't die, that can live for hundreds of years, pay really low tax, your Chevrons and Disneys, when new companies are paying market rates. So I'm interested in that portion of reform because I think it's actually anti-competitive and it's not good for our economy. So if that ends up being the final language and what it specifically does, great. My concern is that to take the portion of taxes that were paid by companies in the 70s and use that as a benchmark in a world that has become increasingly globalized, where our companies are competing internationally, where it's very easy for companies to decide to grow and move jobs to other states, and where they will most likely pass on most of the cost to the small businesses that are renting land from them or to their customers through higher cost of goods and services. I worry that if we are too aggressive about simply trying to go back to the 1970s share of the property taxes coming from companies, it may backfire, when we can just as easily tax concentrations of wealth among shareholders and executives.
Time.
Thank you.
My name is Robert Aguirre. I have a question. I think both of you have talked very well about permanent supportive housing. But last year, according to Point in Time Count, we had an increase of 42% of the homeless people that are living in the streets. And the amount of housing that we're building is insufficient to be able to house that many people. What do you suggest we do in the meantime, and would you be willing to accept sanctioned encampments, and why has District 10 not built any tiny homes or planned on building any tiny home villages in their district?
It's time for us to be much more aggressive and much more creative about housing solutions, transitional housing, from tiny homes to shelters that work. We cannot wait to build brand new permanent supportive housing to house everyone. I supported Measure A. We should continue building that brand new permanent supportive housing, but at the rate we're building and at the cost, you're absolutely right. We're going to continue to have thousands of people living in our streets, in our creeks without care if we don't get more creative. So I'm supportive of bringing tiny homes to our district. I'm supportive of other more cost-effective mechanisms that can help us address the scale of the problem. The real challenge here is the scale is off the charts. It's 10,000 people in our county. It's 6,000 people in our city. And our solutions are not scaled. They're just not at an appropriate scale. So yes, I completely agree with you. We have to be way more aggressive, way more creative, and District 10 is also going to have to do its fair share. So I appreciate the question. I think you're really on to something important here, and we can't keep doing what we've been doing.
Was in District 10. I do think that District 10 has become a little bit more open-minded. When I'm at the doors, people are asking me, how are we going to get the people out of the creeks? They're understanding and looking at it in a bigger picture that these are human lives. And yes, permanent supportive housing is the solution, but it's not going to happen quick enough. And I think that we can look for temporary fixes. But what I hate if we start having homeless encampments sanctioned, that's a solution, which it's not. I'm also supportive of navigation centers. San Francisco's been having some success with those. So we do have to be creative. I think from the last time that District 10 turned down the tiny houses, we've now opened up Holy Spirit Church where people can park there. So there are ways that we can help out in District 10. What I do want to avoid until we're ready and we have the transit is building high density affordable housing out there, or even permanent supportive housing, because we don't have the transportation and the facilities out there. So next.
Yes, Bruce Roberts. I wanted to ask what both of you are going to do about the Ellis Act. And what concerns me is that if you saw it, were at the hearing or saw it on Channel 26, we see hundreds of people ask them, please don't create gentrification. At the end of it, the city council says, well, we have our 6 votes and we're gonna do what we want anyway. So my feeling is, what are you gonna do about the Ellis Act?
Thank you for bringing up that question.
Thanks, Bruce.
There's, problems with homeless, there's lack of affordable housing, there's a lack of low-income housing, there's a lack of supportive housing, there's a push to build high density along transit corridors with the theory that transit is working. And what we have seen in the paper is VTA is cutting services on bus lines. The light rail that I live on, I live along those lines, they're empty. I mean, and it's expensive and it's not necessarily going to where people need to go. What are your ideas, knowing that the county oversees the transit, what are your ideas to get more housing and improved transit?
Great question. I completely agree, and as you know, if on council, either of us would have a chance of sitting on the VTA board, so it's a very relevant question. You're right, it's not working. We're spending 2/3 of the budget on light rail when 2/3 of the ridership is on buses, and buses go point to point, they're more flexible. So one thing I'd look at is let's study what it would look like to reallocate funding to buses, which are more flexible and more widely used. Specifically from our district, looking at 85, which has horrible traffic, we have a median that's been sitting there for 25 years for light rail that's not going to come because it will cost too much and no one will take it. We're going to pave a lane in each direction and do rapid bus for anything over 12 passengers, public and private. Every one of those shuttles, if it's a full-size bus, takes 60 cars off the road. That helps everybody and it's better for the environment. So we've got to be creative, we've got to be flexible, we can't be rigid and ideological in how we approach this. Buses are working better. On 85, we got to add that rapid bus lane, and we have to innovate.
Time.
I have more to say, we'll talk after.
Thank you for that question. I want to start with the VTA board. I do think that VTA board needs to be more diverse. It shouldn't be elected city officials sitting on that board deciding to probably take public transportation or understand as well as the community and the residents. So that would be one of the first things I would suggest. Again, we talk about building the transportation around housing. Also, that last mile, like what does that mean? We need to really make that be in transit corridors where we build the housing so that people will use it. And again, it goes back to education. We need people to understand the importance of taking public transportation to support putting it in and also for our environment. So I think that's not that expensive and an easy campaign for us to do.
For Senator's office, and one of my charges is the census. And one of the bigger things that is obvious with the ICE situation is that it's a way in order to limit the involvement of underprivileged or undocumented communities in order to, in our specific case, lose potential representation from the census. And moving forward, what is a good methodology that the city and the county and just us as politicals in general can take in order to remove that fear and to involve our undocumented community, get them documented and or have their civic involvement because they're going to be critical coming up.
And our community members to be able to get the message out by going into the communities, going door to door, canvassing, explaining why it's important and how we'll lose funding and how our districts will change, and then it's like a snowball effect. It'll get worse and worse and worse. So I think it's really a face-to-face interaction and also some, again, public service messages. And even for, I know Senator Bell is about this, but him speaking about it too, so people understand that they are safe. There's so much mistrust in our government from what's going on at the White House that it's no wonder people don't want to answer it. So we have to get the message out of why it's important. And again, I think that comes to community and face-to-face interactions.
Place where we're very aligned. I think those of us who have the privilege of citizenship and the safety and security that comes with that have a responsibility to get out in the community and do the organizing and the door knocking and the outreach to show people solidarity and to show them that we're there with them and to explain why it's so important that we're all counted. And so I think it's a communications and an organizing challenge, and it is important that we count every person in our county because they do count, and we need the resources to support the community. So I think it's a place where we're extremely aligned. Thank you.
And congratulations on your beautiful family and all the happiness in the world for you. I do want to ask you a tough question though, which is, I was on the endorsement committee for the county party, as you know, and had the opportunity to read your questionnaires. And I was really concerned and taken aback by your answer on the cooperation with ICE question. In particular, when you said that, you spoke to the police chief and the mayor, but you didn't really talk to people in the undocumented community before coming to that conclusion and filling out that questionnaire. And I think that collaboration with ICE is, there's a moral message, quite apart from the sort of instrumental argument that you're making, there's a moral message and an ethical message that collaboration sends in the time in which we're living. I heard you say during, I think, your answer to this question, I'm a Democrat, but, and I think that was really the problem that I had with your candidacy was that there were a lot of buts. So I would like to hear your response to that. Thanks.
As I said, I actually know the community quite well because I spent my entire childhood growing up in Watsonville in a community that's a third undocumented. The kids on my soccer team were undocumented. Many of my neighbors were undocumented. I taught at Eastside San Jose. Many of my students were undocumented. So the idea that I am not interacted with the community or asked people questions or understood, I think is just really, really unfair. In fact, in Jenny's answer, she referenced the police chief who agrees with me on this. The mayor who agrees, the district attorney who agrees, the county of Alameda, Monterey, San Mateo. Again, very few people in our community commit crimes, very few commit violent crimes, but there are extreme cases where there are bad people, and when we say we're not going to cooperate, when we have somebody who has committed violent crimes, maybe repetitively, and we say, well, as a matter of policy, we won't cooperate. We are giving license to the federal government to actually raid the community to find those people. It's going to backfire.
So when I was referencing talking to Eddie Garcia, it was about the fact that that our communities aren't safer if ICE is working with the jails because they're afraid to talk to the police after that. So I think that was my point. I want to make that clear. But my thought is pretty simple. We should not even have a federal ICE building in Morgan Hill, let alone work with the counties and the jails. Like I said, ICE has access to the databases. They want us to do the work, they can do the work. And if there's violent offenders, they are deported. It's not like we're opening the door and we're letting murderers loose. So I think we have to be careful with that narrative. And yes, I don't agree with ICE working with our county and with our jails.
And last question from our timer, and then we're going to cut off audience questions.
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to time her.
Yeah.
All right, Rosie, go ahead.
And I'm putting the timer. So I'm Rosie Zepeda, and I get to hear a lot of, I worked in Eastside schools, I did this, I did that. I was an undocumented child from the age of 4 to 11, so I actually lived that experience. But what I will share with everyone, because I'm working on the Census 2020 with the churches, immigrant communities do not feel safe with anyone that has to do with the government, point blank. And this is about power. So let's fast forward, you're already in the council seat, and I will tell you what's coming down the pipe. What's coming down the pipe is that there's planned raids that are going to happen from March to May to make sure that people do, that is coming down the pipe. You're on city council, What are you going to do? What measures are you going to put in place? How are you going to round up the rest of the council so that we truly have a democratic process and everybody is included? Thanks.
Whatever you want.
That's fine.
Do you want to go last?
Thanks. No, that's okay. Thank you for the question.
Oh, we went out of order.
Yeah, I think we're out of order, but that's okay. You can go first next. I will go out to the community and stand with people and be out there telling their stories and telling our district how serious this is. I mean, I will personally commit to spending my time and the soapbox that I have being on council, explaining why this is such a critical issue and the human cost. And so I will commit to being out there telling the story, telling our district, which maybe doesn't want to think about it because maybe they don't have to, explaining them why this matters and telling them to the best of my ability the human stories and the people that it affects and what it actually means for the community. So I will absolutely personally invest in making sure that we protect our entire community, including our undocumented community, and that we tell those stories and develop empathy in a district that maybe doesn't have to confront it every day. I understand where you're coming from, and I take your point very seriously. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Rosie. I think I've answered that a lot with some points already, so you kind of know where I stand on that. But again, I think it's getting people organized together that will go out into the communities and that will talk to our undocumented communities to make sure they understand the importance and they feel safe. We have already something called the Rapid Response Network through Women's March, which I've hosted some trainings on that also will help people that feel threatened. But what I also want to add on to that is look at it from the other side. I think it's very important to educate people in our community, people that are more privileged, that, like Matt said, don't want to think about it. Well, they're choosing not to think about it, or they don't think it's a right idea. We need to explain to them the human component of that, and also for them, even if they don't like it, how it's going to take away money from our state and our counties and our cities, and why that's important. So again, face-to-face is how I would do that. And working with the council and sitting down and making sure they understand. I think that when I'm on the council, the majority will understand, and we'll have to work with the rest of them to get there, but I think we can do it.
At this point, we have closing statements from both of our candidates. Matt, would you like to go first?
You get 2 minutes.
You get 2 minutes, otherwise I'll give it to Jenny. Jenny wants to go? Okay.
All right, thank you again for this opportunity and to be able to tell you where we stand on important issues that are important to all of San Jose and to District 10. My tagline is for our communities, for our families, for all, and that's what I mean. I mean for everybody. I want to represent D10, and I understand the issues there. I've lived there, but I also want to make sure that everybody has the equal opportunity to be able to thrive and live in a San Jose where they have the quality of life that people come to San Jose for. Again, I want to bring it back to community. I think it's important. Maybe it's the mom in me, but when I think about working at City Hall, it's because I'm doing it for the people. I don't have aspirations to go further up. I want to be a city council member because I love my community, I love my city, and that's where I want to be. So I'm hoping that I have your support tonight. I'm looking for the sole endorsement because I want to represent my democratic values, many of the values that all of you in this room, I understand, and we both support together. So again, thank you for your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. I know it's Monday Night Football. I don't even watch football, but I was heard there was a conflict. So I appreciate you all being out here and participating in civic engagement. This is really what it's all about. You know, I first came to San Jose for economic opportunity, for upward mobility, and I think that's what's made San Jose great for years, and we're losing that. We're struggling to be a place with a large and diverse middle class with upward mobility because of public policy failures. We haven't built the housing we need to build. We've not invested in the transit and infrastructure that we need. We're struggling with growth, and that's what motivates me to run. We're raising a family here, and I want to make sure that my kids can live here and can thrive, and that other people's kids from every walk of life, every income level can survive and thrive in San Jose. And so that's what motivates me. I hope you will join me in this campaign. I've been endorsed by the only Democrat who has won in this seat, Nancy Pyle, by Evan Lowe, Robert Rivas, Mark Berman, Ellen Kamei, Ann Ravel, who know the district and who know that I am the right Democrat to win in a district that is historically very conservative and that I can listen to, build empathy with, and build the bridges and the coalition necessary to actually win in this district. So I want to thank you again for your time, and I look forward to continuing to work with you and serving the community. So thank you again, and have a great evening.
Everyone for your participation. I'm going to hand it back over to a representative from the Silicon Valley Dem Club. Who's coming up? Anyone but not me?
Kristen's coming up to explain the voting process.
All right. Please turn your attention to Kristen Rivers and her adorable little hip button.
Can we give Mara a round of applause?
So she stole my thunder a little bit. I was gonna just give her a slightly bigger introduction for our big round of applause for Mara. She is the co-founder of Orchard City Indivisible, OCI, and co-owner of the delicious Snake and Butterfly and Campbell. Shameless plug, go and buy stuff from her.
Yes, small business.
So we are up to the part in our agenda where we're going to talk about elections and elect our which of the we're going to have. So everyone who is a member should have a envelope with 2 ballots. So normally we have 3, but since we only have 2 candidates, we only need 2 ballots this time. So in the first one, your choices are either to vote for sole endorsement for Jenny or sole endorsement for Matt, or no endorsement, meaning you don't want the club to support either candidate or endorse either candidate, or if you wish to abstain. If you choose to abstain, so please, well, okay. I was gonna ask to wait until we went through the explanation because last time we had to do a revote because people voted before they heard the whole explanation. And I don't have enough for a revote this time, so if you vote ahead of time, you gotta wait. Okay, so those are your 4 choices for the first time we go through. If no one of those 4 choices gets a 2/3 majority vote, then we will have a second ballot. The second ballot, you will either vote for dual endorsement, meaning we endorse them both, no endorsement, meaning we endorse no one, or again, you abstain. In either case, if you abstain, your vote does not count towards any of the other categories. Are there any questions? Okay, so the lovely and brilliant Shalom will come around with the box. So if you please go ahead and just put your ballots into the box and then we will count them as quickly as possible.
Up to run against the slate, so we are going to have each member of the slate for 2020 introduce themselves very briefly tonight, and then we'll take just a hand vote on whether or not we want to endorse the slate for next year for the SVDC Executive Board. So first of all, we have Jenny Hutchinson, who is running for president for next year.
Thank you, Melinda. So I'm currently the acting president of this club and local political activism primarily around violence against women. I was involved in Women's March Bay Area on the leadership team. I led the March for Science. And I'm currently working on a CDAW task force, which is advocating for the passage of a sort of Women's Bill of Rights on the local level. So I hope that you will support our wonderful slate, since that's the only option we have. And let me introduce.
I'm Shalom Marquardt. I've been on the board, my pleasure to be on the board this last year, and looking to be the vice president this coming year. I've also been the vice president of the Women's Caucus for this year as well as last year, and super excited to do it again. I have 20 years of experience in the environmental consulting industry as a geologist, and I've spent the last 6 years volunteering for the Society of Women Engineers for educational programs for underrepresented girls to do summer camp for engineering every year at my pleasure, and just really excited to work for the Silicon Valley Democratic Club again. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Kristen Lynn, who is currently our treasurer and is running for treasurer again.
And everybody has 30 seconds.
Hi, my name is Kristen Lin. My career background is finance professional, so I'm currently doing the treasurer job for the club, and I'm running for re-election for the treasurer position again. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Vinod Menon, who is our current recording secretary and running for the same position again.
Thank you and good evening. Really excited to be considering myself for re-election for the recording secretary position for the e-board. I'm an electronics engineering executive with over 35 years of experience in Silicon Valley. But most importantly, I spend my weekends helping folks who are somewhat challenged with situations in life. And so I mentor people. My youngest student is actually in the audience here at 89, and my oldest is 15. So it's the wide range, and I help them with their educational goals, personal goals. Thank you.
Vinod. Next, I'd like to introduce Michelle Dauber, our current parliamentarian and at-large board member.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dauber. I'm a professor of law at Stanford Law School. I'm a delegate to the California Democratic Party, where I serve on the Rules Committee and helped to write, served on a task force where I helped to write the current code of conduct against sexual violence and sexual harassment for the California Democratic Party, which I'm very proud of. I also chaired, as you know, the recall of Judge Persky, and I've been very involved in a number of feminist movements and other movements. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, I'd like to introduce Jeff Levin, currently at-large board member. Jeff?
You okay?
Oh, there he is.
This is counting balance. Hi, Jeff Levine. This is my second year on the board. I've been active on a number of issues. Supporting corporate-free candidates is a big one with me. Also, LGBT rights. I was heavily involved in the anti-Prop 8 motion, and during the marriage equality issue, I personally married 150 couples.
And next, I'd like to introduce Jeff Orloff, at-large board member.
Hi, my name is Jeff Orloff, a lifelong Democrat. I've worked on every presidential campaign since Robert Kennedy.
Wow.
Remember him?
Yes.
Yeah, great guy, great guy. I've been a member of this club for a number of years. Been on the executive board for 2 years, and most recently I've been working on events. So if you happen to go to our barbecue in the summertime, I was involved in that. And sometimes you'll see me over there playing with the food. So thank you all for being here, by the way. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Next is Frank Ponciano, who you heard from at the beginning of our meeting. Is Frank still here? No, he left? Okay. Alrighty. Next, Fred Rayhauser, my co-chair and at-large board member.
Hi, I'm Fred Rayhauser. I've been on the executive board, I think, 5 or 6 years. I'm a retired high-tech executive. I've been general manager of 3 or 4 high-tech companies and ran them with very successful revenue records. And I look forward to making sure that our club runs smoothly and successfully. I do endorsements, and I work on the program committee, and I work on the nominating committee. So,
Next, Bill Barrett, our former treasurer and longtime at-large board member.
Thanks a lot. It's been fun as treasurer, but I've been sort of in the middle of things. I have a long distinguished history of teaching and engineering. I added up all the students that I've used to teach. The number is over 1,000 in the last 20 years or so. Large classes at San Jose State, that sort of thing. It's been my pleasure to be the treasurer for something like 6 years. And I'm happy to hand that over to Kristen. And I'm just the proudest punch of this new board, the directions we're taking, the number of faces we see tonight. Oh, you cut off.
Thank you.
Kristen Rivers, do you want to come and introduce yourself? Kristen River, at-large board member.
Okay, so 30 seconds. Employment. I currently work for the County Office of Education at a community school. So this is for schools 6 through 12, kids 6 through 12th grade who've been expelled from school districts. And I spent 10 years as a software program manager and operations manager at Cisco. I have a master's degree in organizational management and a PhD in psychology. I'm also a graduate of Emerge and Victory Institute, which is a shout out to the LGBTs out there. And got almost 34,000 votes running for East Side School Board, so that's something. And got the Don Gem Award. I founded TWW at San Jose. And I'm both elections chair, and also on the endorsement committee, and also CEDA. So very happy to be part of this phenomenal slate and looking forward to a affirmative vote. Thank you very much.
And now to members who will be new members of the board next year, of the 2020 board. First one is Alexia Worsham.
Alexia, I've lived in Santa Clara County for over 20 years in Redwood Estates, which is an unincorporated county south of Los Gatos in the mountains. I live with my husband and our sons. We have twins who are 16 years old and are in their junior year at Los Gatos High. I'm retired from Santa Clara County, where I worked for the health and hospital system, and I now work for NAMI Santa Clara County, which is the local affiliate of National Alliance on Mental Illness. I have several family members who've been affected by mental illness, and my interest in political activism has really grown out of the need to advocate for services for them. Happy to join this board. I'm also California Days Caucus.
Member joining the board next year, Don Draper.
Go Don.
Thank you very much. So first I want to say that I am an immigrant, so I am anti-ICE.
Yay!
I'm very honored to be with such a distinguished group of members of the board. And one of the things that attracts me to the Democratic Party is that this is a party of ideas. And I am interested in promoting ideas. So we have a little group of people going who we meet occasionally to discuss various things, and would invite all of you to join us. I will supply the wine.
Thank you, Don. Next new member of the 2020 board, Marlene Zapata.
Hi, I'm Marlene Zapata, and I work at the Hewlett Foundation by day for the Cyber Initiative, which is helping fund organizations that are building a more robust cybersecurity field. I actually come from Florida. I've worked for the FDP out there, presidential campaigns, all sorts of things. I came to California about 8 years ago, and I've been working a lot with women's issues, children's issues. I'm currently on the Commission on the Status of Women for Santa Clara County. I also have done a lot of work with foster youth and building out programs within nonprofits that support the foster youth system. And I'm just proud of continuing that and being a part of the Silicon Valley Democratic Club. Thank you.
So, hi. If not, I'm really. Let me put the timer on myself. I'm very, very humbled and proud that so many people on this board asked me to join. Why? Because we had no Latino representation. So now we have two! Yay! Very fast, what I'm working on is I'm the co-chair for education for the South Bay Progressive Alliance, and we just formed what's called Backpacks, which is the first pack to only endorse candidates who are truly going to be for public education. So get a round of applause for that. And finally, I'm the co-chair for the D9 leadership group, so I'm very happy to be on this board. So thank you so much.
2 members, current board member Adia Hogue, and who could not be here tonight, and also Barinder Alawalia, who is a new board member for next year, could not be here also. So moving forward, basically what we want to do is take a hand vote to vote in the new board for 2020. So if all of those in favor of the board that just spoke could put their hands up, then we'll count. Okay.
Board members though?
Yes, you can vote.
You're supposed to hold your card. You're supposed to hold your card up.
Oh, hold up your card so we can verify, or your name tag. We can verify that you're allowed to vote. Okay, let's just say all opposed. Rosie, are you opposed to being on the board?
Oh no.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Okay, the new board is in effect.
Okay, so thank you on behalf of all of us, very exciting. And I do have a result. And I grabbed the wrong piece of paper. Oh, here it is, okay. Sorry, lots of papers. Okay, so so the requirement was a 2/3 majority for a sole endorsement, and that was achieved by Ms. Jennie Higgins Bradanini. So there were 66 votes, and 43 were required for a 66% and or 2/3 majority, and she received 46. So excellent job. And then Matt received 17, which was 25.7. 2 voted for no endorsement, which was less than 3%, and 2 for no endorsement, and then, or just said that, and then 1 abstained, which I don't really know why you bothered to turn that in, but thank you for that. And congratulations, Jennie, sole endorsed candidate. And thank you both very, very much, and everybody for your time coming and staying to vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
2 members, current board member Adia Hogue, and who could not be here tonight, and also Barinder Alawalia, who is a new board member for next year, could not be here also. So moving forward, basically what we want to do is take a hand vote to vote in the new board for 2020. So if all of those in favor of the board that just spoke could put their hands up, then we'll count. Okay.
Board members though?
Yes, you can vote.
You're supposed to hold your card. You're supposed to hold your card up.
Oh, hold up your card so we can verify, or your name tag. We can verify that you're allowed to vote. Okay, let's just say all opposed. Rosie, are you opposed to being on the board?
Oh no.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Okay, the new board is in effect.
Okay, so thank you on behalf of all of us, very exciting. And I do have a result. And I grabbed the wrong piece of paper. Oh, here it is, okay. Sorry, lots of papers. Okay, so, so the requirement was a 2/3 majority for a sole endorsement, and that was achieved by Ms. Jennie Higgins Bradanini. So there were 66 votes, and 43 were required for a 66%, and or 2/3 majority, and she received 46. So excellent job. And then Matt received 17, which was 25.7. 2 voted for no endorsement, which was less than 3%, and 2 for no endorsement, and then, or just said that, and then 1 abstained, which I don't really know why you bothered to turn that in, but thank you for that. And congratulations, Jennie, sole endorsed candidate. And thank you both very, very much, and everybody for your time coming and staying to vote. Thank you very much.